The Thunderbird Supercoupe won Car and Driver's Car of the Year award in 1989 when it was first introduced. It was Ford's flagship performance model at the time, as the Mustang Cobra wouldn't come out until 1993. This car was Ford's response to the sport luxury cars coming out of Europe in the late 1980s, but it's become largely forgotten about today. So what makes these cars so special, and what sets them apart from other American cars at the time? Well, for starters, Ford decided to give the car an independent rear suspension. The only other American car at the time to have one was the Corvette. Ford also gave the Thunderbird of this generation an SLA suspension on all four corners, also known as a double wishbone. The Supercoupe model in particular had a lot of unique and high-tech features as well. Had electronically controlled dampers, variable rate power steering, and of course came standard with a limited slip differential. Last but not least, the heart of these cars is an Eaton supercharged 3.8 liter V6 engine. At the time, the engine produced more torque output than the 5 liter V8 of the Mustang GT. That was enough to propel the Supercoupe 0 to 60 in about 7 seconds in 1989. Obviously, my particular Supercoupe is a little bit more modified than it was when it was stock. I've got an MPX 90 aftermarket blower case running about 15% overdrive. Got a large front mount intercooler, custom ground camshaft, and a custom dual exhaust, as well as fueling and tuning mods to go with the extra boost. You might be wondering why I drove the Mustang today to the shop. If you guessed that the Supercoupe's got some more stuff broken on it, you would be right. I gotta change the alternator. I've had a power steering leak going on for a little while on the car. The strut rod bushing decided it was going to explode a little bit. You know, years ago, I replaced these with the Moog thermoplastic, whatever. I found out later that they certainly had a lot of quality issues and could break, so I've been monitoring them pretty closely and just kind of putting off changing them. But now it's time to get them changed. And let's get some jack stands under the car. Remember, kids, always use jack stands for safety. For what I'm doing today, I'm going to put the jack stands under the frame. You know, one of the things I always like to do whenever I'm working on the car, just because it's an old car, is no matter what, I'm always going to take a look at whatever is around it, just to keep up on what's going on. So in this case, I pulled off the wheel. We're gonna get in here and just take a look. A little bit worn, but it looks like they're doing pretty good. The rotor looks good as well. So it's just important to just check everything as you're working through. Make sure you're catching issues, if there are issues, and put them on the list to address them. So right now, everything's looking pretty good. at least as far as the brakes go. Obviously got some major other issues here to deal with, so. All right, well, let me take a little bit to sort of explain what was going on and what the problem was. So I got the passenger side apart, and this is what's left of that bushing that you saw in the video there. It's just completely shredded, exploded. It's always the front side, it seems. The back side seems okay. But this is hard. This stuff's hard as a rock. So what the problem is it doesn't allow the suspension to flex very well there, which just destroys this hard material, beats it up like this. This is one of those weird cases where the factory, rubber bushings are the right choice, because that strut rod actually like pivots with the suspension. It's part of what makes the lower control arm an A arm, and it's where the caster adjustment is done. So it's definitely important this move and not break like this. So yeah. Unfortunately, the problem with these cars is they're getting pretty old, and the original parts are long discontinued. You're sort of stuck with a slew of kind of garbage aftermarket parts that just don't work. What I managed to do a few years back was I was able to locate a couple OEM bushings. This stuff's new old stock at this point, so just original rubber bushings. I got 2 sets of them just sitting in a warehouse somewhere at a Ford dealership or something. That's great, that's got the bushings, but part of the problem too is that these aftermarket bushings, they use a different sleeve design than these cars were designed to ever have. And good luck finding those in a warehouse. Those are very hard to come by. But online, one of the guys in the community made some stainless steel replacements that are sleeved and lock in together like this and allow the proper compression and alignment of those bushings. The guy that made these is known as DLF. DLF passed away many years ago at this point, but before he did, he released the some really simple design for these, and so I fabbed some up on the lathe a long time ago, and just have not gotten around to putting them in, but now I am. Well, unfortunately, to take those bushings out, I had to take apart so much of the suspension because it's all locked in together with the strut rod. I just literally had to completely disassemble the whole thing. So I figured it was really a good time for me to put my lowering springs in the car. I got some of these used Eibach lowering springs. Some other stuff that I've got is I do have these Tokiko Illumia II replacement and upgraded electronic ride control shocks for the Thunderbird. I had a bunch of problems with just getting the coilover assembly assembled with spring compressor and all that. It's just a pain. I'll show you how to assemble this without a spring compressor and put some springs in one of these Thunderbirds to get it lowered. So let's get into it. So you're going to take your shock, and you're going to set the spring on the shock. It's important to line up the notch down here with the end of the spring. Make sure it's seated correctly. And on these cars, the flat side of the spring is going to go up in the top. All right. So we've got this assembled like this. Obviously this is too tall. I've already installed the upper mount inside the car. This is a brand new KYB upper mount. Basically, we're gonna put this in on the lower control arm, and then we're gonna put a jack under and use the weight of the car to compress the spring. You got to be careful to guide the shaft and the spring and everything like that through the upper mount, but so long as you get everything lined up and through all of those, the weight of the car is gonna compress the spring more than enough to get your upper mount, tightened. So the only part that makes it a little bit difficult is this assembly itself is quite heavy, so it's not super fun to play around with. And get in the wheel well here. Get in here. Get your lower bolt in place. So that's going to hold that in place. Take your jack, lift it up under the control arm here. And again, you can't forget, work on making sure everything gets lined up inside here. Your spring's a little bit off alignment. Raise it up a little bit. There we go. Okay, spring is where it needs to be. Okay, now I got to move the shock a little bit. Get the shock lined up in that hole. It's okay if you're a little bit off at first, because as long as you go nice and slow, because the shock, the shock is designed to compress. So you don't want to go crazy, but it's okay if you're off just a little bit on the alignment. You could get it a little bit of tension and then just push it in like I did. You're going to jack it up, get some weight under it, and so you just jack it until it really just barely starts to lift the car, and then you got full weight on it. There we go. And now once that's set, then you're going to go in up top and go ahead and tighten those screws. All right, see, it's all in through here, no problem. I'm going to put on our OEM washer here. Yep, everything's good. We're going to run that down. Okay. Everything's still seated nice and good. All right. These don't need to be very tight up here. They really don't. You've got the full weight of the car on them. And then this is for the ride control actuator. It's got a slot here on this. And we're going to go ahead and run it down. All right, now we've got everything bolted up. We just have to get the ride control locked in. It's like, it works like kind of like an aftermarket, adjustable shock. There's a shaft up in the center there and a little shaft in the center of this actuator, and it just locks together, and then it turns that shaft when it goes between firm and soft. There you go. All right, well, I got the Thunderbird all buttoned up now. Suspension's back together. I got my Eibach lowering springs in, my Tokiko shocks, and the new strut rod bushings. I want to talk a little bit about the suspension. So I don't know if a lot of people know much about these cars. I know from the comments, a lot of folks that have owned these cars, they really love them. They've enjoyed owning them, whether they're a Supercoupe or just a V8 Thunderbird or even a V6 Thunderbird. One of the reasons I think that people have enjoyed owning these cars is the suspension. So one of the things that really sets the Thunderbird apart here from something like a Mustang is really the suspension. The Thunderbird uses what's called an SLA suspension in the front and the rear. What SLA means is a short and long arm. So we have a short arm on the top and a long arm on the bottom. What that does is that when the suspension moves through its motion and it compresses up, the shorter control arm on the top pulls the top of the knuckle inboard, which gives you negative camber gain in a turn. It's like bracing yourself in a corner. This front suspension style SLA is well known as one of the best that there is. It's used on tons of race cars, circle track cars. The Corvette uses it. Really, any serious performance car has an SLA suspension from the factory, and that's what these have. Albeit it's much bigger and heavier than most sports cars. The Thunderbird is not a sports car. It really is a grand touring coupe. But this is one of the things that really makes it special. I do find it rather funny when I look at the factory manual. It has a little bit of cheats in it though to like access some of the parts because they're so hard that to get to like the power steering valve or the line, they actually tell you to take the wiper fluid reservoir out so that you can snake a hand in under the charge piping to access it. We're not going to do that today. I'm still waiting for my alternator to come in, so I don't have a new alternator yet, but I can get it out of the way to get access to the power steering pump, which is stuck way down here. Just pull these off. And that's 2. Yeah, so this is the valve right buried under all of this crud. These power wires and stuff. Yeah. Power steering line goes into it, and yeah, and some electronics go into it. So not a lot of room in this engine bay to fit stuff around all these charge pipes. So something thin like this really comes in handy. It fits a little bit better. The Supercoupe's kind of crazy because it's actually got 3 serpentine belts. It has one for the main accessory drive, and then it has 2 belts for the supercharger drive. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, look at that.
This is probably the best lighting you've ever had while working on a car.
Probably.
Did you get it?
Yep. We got it. It's just that. Oh, no, there we go. So in my last video, I posed a little bit of a question to the viewers. Is it really worth it? Is it worth it to drive a 30-year-old high-performance car? Supercoupes have been a challenge to work on, but ultimately it's made me a better mechanic. And when it's working, it's so fun to drive and it's so unique. It's my favorite car to drive, so I think to me it's totally worth all the effort and work to keep this thing going and to daily drive it. I love it.